will now begin the October 5th, 2023 meeting of the City of Des Moines Plan and Zoning Commission. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission, other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff for details on council hearings. Applicant will be given 10 minutes to present the request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed and the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or member of the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. Okay, can I get a motion from a commissioner to approve the minutes of the September 21st, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Carolyn. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. All those abstain? Pass, sorry.
Thanks
pass.
for being there.
All right. Okay. There are a couple items that can be moved to the consent agenda if no one objects. Item number 3, a request from Airport Development for review and approval of the third amendment to the Airport Commerce Park South PUD conceptual plan for multiple parcels located in the vicinity of 2400 Gannett Avenue to allow the use of metal siding, cladding, and roofing materials. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like this item heard in the public hearing? Okay. Are there any members of the commission who would like this item heard in the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, item number 3 will...
Maybe go ahead and read it under
the consented item.
the other item. You can go.
Oh, okay.
One motion to move them to.
Yeah, that would be efficient. Okay, the other item that can be moved to consent, item number 8, a request from JED Corporation for the following regarding a parcel located in the vicinity of 4221 Southeast 14th Street. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM, and to rezone the property from MX3-B mixed-use district to MX3 mixed-use district to allow renovation of an existing building use as vehicle maintenance and repair, minor, and vehicle sales uses. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like this item heard in the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone on the commission who would like this item heard in the public hearing? Okay, item number 8 is also eligible to move to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion from a commissioner to move item 3 and 8 to the consent agenda?
I'll move.
Thank you, Emily. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Yeah, I think I did this backwards. I will go through the consent items, number 1 and 2. Consent item 1, request from Neighborhood Development Corp. For the following regarding property located at 1408 31st Street. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM. To amend Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification for the northern 50 feet of the property from neighborhood mixed use to within a neighborhood node to community mixed use within a neighborhood node, and to rezone the northern 50 feet of the property from MX1 mixed use district to RX1 mixed use district. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like item number 1 taken off consent and heard in the public hearing? Okay, is there any commissioners who would like item number 1 removed from the consent agenda and heard in the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, item number 1 will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 2, a request from Lutheran Services of Iowa for the following regarding property located in the vicinity of 3125 Cottage Grove Avenue. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM, to amend Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification from low-density residential to neighborhood mixed use, and to rezone the property from N5 Neighborhood District to RX1 Mixed Use District to allow a minor expansion of an existing parking lot. Is there anyone in the audience who would like this item heard in the public hearing tonight? Is there a commissioner present tonight who would like this removed from consent and heard in public hearing? Okay, seeing none, item 2 will also remain on the consent agenda. So the consent agenda items tonight are number 1, 2, 3, and 8. Can I get a motion from a commissioner to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passed. All right, so we will begin the public hearing with, number 6, I'm sorry. Item number 6 would like to be continued to the November 2nd meeting of the Plan and Zoning Commission. Can I get a motion from a commissioner to, thank you, Francis. All those in favor to continue item 6 to November 2nd? Okay, thank you. Item passed.
I just want to confirm that, is there anybody in the audience that was here for that particular item, item 6? Okay, thank you.
Okay. We will begin the public hearing with item number 4, for which I am recusing myself. So Johnny Alcivar, Commissioner, will be our lead for that one.
Thank you. Item number 4 is a request from Starlink LLC for the following regarding property located at 1900 Arlington Avenue. A, determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM. B, excuse me. B, amend the Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification for the property from low medium density residential to high density residential. And item C, rezone the property from N5 Neighborhood District to NX1 Mixed Use District to allow reuse of the existing structure for multiple household residential use with up to 7 dwelling units. Catherine.
Chair, members of the Commission, Catherine Dreyhaus, planner for the City of Des Moines. As mentioned, this property is located at 1900 Arlington Avenue. Many of you saw this at the September 7th meeting. It was also momentarily presented at the September 21st meeting for a continuation. So we'll try to keep this fairly brief. The property is located at the corner of Franklin Avenue and Arlington Avenue in the River Bend neighborhood. Some site photos. These are the same ones as were shown previously. And then as mentioned, the applicant is looking to update the zoning on the parcel to retain use of reestablish use of the pre-existing 7 units within the building. Staff has not updated the recommendation from what was previously recommended, so I'll just refresh briefly that staff is recommending approval of the request to rezone to NX1 and amend the land use, but we are recommending approval of only 5 units due to the on-site parking that is pre-existing. There are 5 on-site off-street parking spaces on the site. And so that is staff's recommendation, and we will be looking for the applicant to provide an update for us. And then I don't believe we received any new communication from the neighborhood, so the consent map stands as it did previously. We do have the communication that we received previously, which we could go through if anyone desires. But again, it has not been, we have not received anything new. And then I am happy to answer any questions that you might have for me, but I think it might be best to go ahead and turn this over for the update from the applicant.
Thank you, Catherine. Any questions for staff? Nope. Applicant has 10 minutes to present. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards.
Sure. Becky Hugh, 112 10th Street, apartment 309, Des Moines, 50309. So I prepared some updates here for everyone to just review. Just want to remind everyone of the timeline of events that have transpired from acquisition to today. So we bought it as a portfolio in April of 22, so it's over a year at this point. So it came with 3 tenants who were occupying the first floor units, 1 to 3. It had a 7-unit rent roll. And between August and December of 22, we strategically remodeled the second and third floor units while we waited for the bottom units to be evicted. It was a very long process with the court. And Winter Storm Elliott hit in December, and we had a frozen pipe issue, and we had to deal with that as well on the upstairs, just an FYI. So we finally evicted the last remaining tenant in April after about 8 months of being in court and back and forth. In May of 23, we received a zoning determination letter from Eric Lundy concluding that the property defaults to single family after a lapsed rental certificate. That was our first awareness of this issue. We started a pre-application process with the city in July 18. And Michael Delton led that charge. We have the meeting minutes that talked about the exterior site plan and needs to be done. Landscaping, trash enclosure, land survey needs to be done, parking requirement updates, etc. We also engaged Orca Consulting, which is our consultant engineer, to go through the process with us because we felt a professional is necessary here. We had our neighborhood meeting on August 24. About 10 individuals attended, plus minus. And then I also attended the Riverbend neighborhood member meeting that's held monthly on the last Tuesday every month on the 29th, where I talk to a smaller group of people about their concerns and mine as well. September 7 was our P&Z meeting that we had here that lasted about 2.5 hours. It was a pretty memorable event, and we decided to continue, and I said that would be okay. Came back on the 21st to support that continuance to today. That gives us a lot more time to talk to the city, different stakeholders, shareholders, whatnot, about what should happen. And just other things that have happened. September 17, we did invite certain people to come tour our existing Riverbend rentals, and 4 people did. And you can hear from them tonight what they thought, if they're willing to share that. Some people are here tonight from the tour. And then on the 21st, we motioned to continue the hearing today. And here's more that happened. We met with the city on the 22nd of this September, which was just about 2 Fridays ago, to discuss federal grants, specifically the CDBG grant. And it's a 50-50 split between the city through federal funding and us. So if we were to invest $100,000, the city through federal funding would invest $100,000 in any updates. And we started getting bids for several quote-unquote curb appeal items. We heard that was a big concern of the neighbors, especially the egress and where it's located right now. We will be engaging Steve Wilk-Shapiro. I actually got a bid from him today, outlining scope of work. He is an architect that has a lot of historical grant experience and historical renovation experience. And I also attended the other September 26 Riverbend member meeting. And we met again with the board. There's a small group on Tuesday this week to talk about it. And various people voiced their concerns then. And here we are tonight at P&Z. So that's kind of the update. There's a lot that's happened in the last 4 weeks. And I want to say that I have given it my all in trying to come to consensus. And I think there's varying perspectives that we'll hear tonight about this subject matter. And I would like to hear just, yeah, what people think and whatnot, because I think single family is still not the best use given just the funds and just different things that come alongside. I know that's the want majority, but I don't know that's feasible. And I would love to continue with density and continue finishing the project because I think it's the best and highest use personally of the space for the neighborhood with the help of federal funding. So I'll pause right there.
Commission, any questions for the applicant?
Does the rezoning impact your CBD, the CDBG grant or anything?
There is a
like that?
checkbox on the application. It's about 16 pages long. It is contingent on that. I would only go through with this if it were to be zone density and the grant.
So, but does the grant require it versus you requiring it to be rezoned?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I think the grant would require whatever it's being used for to be allowed by zoning. So. And I think you were saying that on this form, there is a box that says, do you have the
Yep.
zoning to allow? the
Yep,
use?
exactly.
Okay.
So that's the first hurdle to meet, which we'll get to. It's contingent upon, and in my case.
How likely is this grant? Like, is it a pretty guaranteed thing?
We did, I sat through the meeting with Becky and our staff with the federal funds. And they, I think it's a strong possibility. Obviously, Becky has to submit a complete application, scope of work that makes sense. It has to be evaluated, and it does require council approval. It's not a staff because of the scale of it.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
there is-
so I personally feel pretty good, this is my words. I feel pretty good about the application so far because I'm engaging with like Jody and for a small business, there were a lot of exemptions from providing certain policies that we have to meet. Like I'm not a principal size company, so there were a lot of things that could be crossed off from that list. But, we have to provide financial audits of the last few years, our ability to execute sources of funds, and the more the better the scope of work, the better it is with bids in hand, because you don't want to be asking for something to say, oh, it was 100,000 more than I expected. So we're getting price discovery now for a lot of things that we want to do, because we have time to do that. But it's not a guarantee I'll get the funds, but I feel pretty good about it, yes. Yes, go ahead.
Describe for me more of what you're planning to do for the exterior improvements?
Sure, so the egress is a given. I think that's the biggest eyesore. It is not in a good shape right now. So there is discussion that we may be able to shift that, if possible, structurally, to the back end of the building. Right now it's front corners of Franklin and Arlington. So we can move it to the back. If there's space, we would try. We would prefer to not have it be on the roof line right now, to support on the roof. So there'd be some configuration that someone like Steve, will be able to help me out with that. So that's a big consideration. There's exterior site plan that needs to be done. So there'll be a trash enclosure that would need, like probably a concrete block trash enclosure needs to be done, some landscaping requirements. I think with decent tree coverage, but they might be new plantation we need to do. Parking is probably a cleanup item to do, maybe striping it, ADA type parking maybe for one spot. But I don't think it's too burdensome on the exterior site plan. It's going to be a curb appeal thing. And then there's potentially funds for a new roof, siding, replacement, or painting per se. There's porches that need to be repaired or replaced entirely. Windows need to be redone as well. Either we try to restore it or we replace it in entirety. There are some that came with vinyl windows that were set in place poorly. The interior, so that's the exterior stuff, which is pretty much, the cover of the house and everything that comes out from it.
So those are planned regardless of whether or not this grant goes.
I would say that the grant is a very big factor of allowing us to do a lot of things I said. The egress is for sure going to be something that we will do because it is a rental code requirement as well. The exterior set improvements, yes, but the siding wasn't part of the plan, but could be part of the plan now, and will be the ask in the grant. I will ask for that, and the roof, and the foundation, and the interior improvements as well. If it's a 50-50 split, I don't see why I shouldn't ask for that money, if you will.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So your goal is still for 7 units in lieu of the staff report
Yes.
recommendation? Okay,
Yes.
great, thanks.
Did anyone who had an interest in it being a single-family home offer to buy you out?
I have a number in mind tonight, it's 300,000.
But did anyone come forward to ask to buy you out?
No, but I didn't explicitly say, hey, 300 grand, you can take my keys and I'll be happily walking off. I offer that tonight to anyone, 300,000. I mean, we can negotiate a little bit at some room, of course, but, you know.
But no one's approached you following
No,
the past
no,
meeting?
no,
Okay.
no. It's a recourse loan, so.
Any
you know,
other
that's fine.
questions from the commission? Thank you. Please sign in. And anyone in support of this project in the audience, you may come up to the podium and you have 5 minutes. And please sign in afterwards if you want to state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Lulu Dickey, and I live at 1814 Oakland Avenue, which is about 300 feet away from 1900 Arlington. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts about this issue. Over the past month and a half, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, hearing the perspectives of my neighbors, and getting to know Becky and Starlink. This hasn't been an easy process for our neighborhood, and I'm sure you will hear from many tonight that have a variety of passionate opinions about the future of 1900 Arlington. After much consideration, I am here to state my support for rezoning the property to a multifamily apartment building with 7 units. Although I do not think this type of rezoning would be appropriate in most cases, the circumstances at hand have led me to believe this is the best option for 1900 Arlington. Becky and Starlink have agreed to improve the building's exterior to mitigate asbestos siding and achieve a more historically sensitive aesthetic. I think this is a good compromise and look forward to them holding up their end of the bargain. I also look forward to our neighborhood building a good relationship with Starlink and their tenants who will be our new neighbors. Now, unfortunately, I feel I have to address what occurred at the meeting on September 7th. I feel that some of the behaviors of the commission showed the biases against our neighborhood and that we still need to overcome. While I have always been open to the idea of rezoning at 1900 Arlington, many of my neighbors had the opposite opinion and rightfully voiced their legitimate concerns. I was extremely disturbed by what I perceived to be an attitude by some commission members that Riverbend doesn't deserve full consideration of the possibilities for properties in our neighborhood. I believe some of you take the stance of density for thee, but not for me. The speed with which you are willing to ram through a major and controversial rezoning in our neighborhood is quite concerning. Would you feel the same for a property in your own backyard? How about one in Waterbury? And for those of you who consider yourself density proponents, do you all live with a 7-plex within 250 feet of your own home? Furthermore, it was stated that to prove that the property could be a single-family home, we needed to come up with the money to purchase it. I didn't know zoning by extortion was how we do things in this city. Or maybe you'd like to argue that we should means test the market forces in this situation. Is that the job of planning? Are we only planning for what the market supports today? I thought the purpose of planning is to shape the future we want. Let's explore the demand that we buy the property. Riverbend Neighborhood is a 501c3 nonprofit. Our annual operating budget is under $15,000. What do we spend our money on? Well, there's our farmers market, which hosts small businesses owned by women and people of color. We spend a big chunk of our budget on that so we can keep the barrier to entry low for these business owners. Then we spend even more so we can provide free food and fun to our neighbors at the last market of the year. What else? We spent some of our money on making free hot meals for families and individuals at the Seafoam Supper Club. Some of it we spent hosting the North High girls and boys soccer teams for a big team dinner. But sure, let's cancel all of that so we can buy a property we never asked to be involved with. I want you all to understand what we are dealing with in our neighborhood. While I think Becky and Starlink are good neighbors and landlords, Unfortunately, not all of our multifamily properties are owned by people like them. Instead, we have people like Rich McHugh, who owns a 36-unit building at 1805 Arlington. I had to dig through layers upon layers of shell companies to identify Mr. McHugh. When I did, one of the top results on Google was an interview of him on his private yacht chatting about how much passive income he brings in. Good for Mr. McHugh, but not great for our neighborhood while his properties deteriorate and his tenants live without basic services like trash removal. Do you think Mr. McHugh knows the name of a single one of his tenants or neighbors? I doubt that he does, but I do. I know them because they reached out to us to help when no one from his company would. That is what we are dealing with in our neighborhood. People who buy up apartments to extract wealth while their tenants can't even get the bare minimum. All people deserve a place that they can live with dignity, no matter if they need housing assistance or not. Unfortunately, we have many landlords in our neighborhood who do not ascribe to that belief. That is why many of my neighbors passionately express their concerns. It is not about Becky and Starlink. It's about parasites like Mr. McHugh. The fact that I have to stand here before you and say all of this really saddens me. I strongly believe in the power of government to make people's lives better. I believe we need more housing. I believe neighborhoods can thrive with a mixture of housing densities. I also believe in my neighborhood. I just wish that you all did too. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would like to leave the letter for the record, we can keep it with one of our staff members.
Can we respond to some questions that she threw out?
No, there's
Or not
point of
asking?
support. We're not asking questions of the audience.
Oh, was just no, from the speaker, since I think some of her comments were directed at
Sure.
things I'd said.
If you have a question
Couple
for me, I'll
questions,
take it.
if we can keep it short.
Yeah, sure. So the first one was, would I support multifamily properties in my neighborhood, or do I live by any? Yes, there's a 6-plex, 8-plex across the street, and a 16 on my block. So yes, I aggressively support multifamily properties. I also aggressively support the fact that there's at least 3 buildings with nameless LLCs that own them within 4 blocks, that we should end that practice. Aggressively agree with all that. No opposition in the slightest. I did want to clarify, Becky was not on a private yacht expressing passive income, is that right?
No, sir, that was Mr. McHugh.
Okay, gotcha, okay. So different person. And then I also wanted to confirm that my opposition, that sounds like it may have been taken as prejudice, was that an argument presented last week was that we will reverse redlining by promoting gentrification. That's what we boiled it down to. And that's not fair and that's not right.
That's not true. That's not true. That was not the argument.
It was fundamentally.
According
was.
to you, that's your opinion.
Okay.
It's fine.
Do we have
Can
another
we
question, or
avoid
can we
the
move on?
argumentation back and forth and just ask a question and she'll answer it?
How does bringing this back to single-family home right the wrongs of redlining, which was the argument said last time, and is the argument here that we're saying we're not appreciative of?
Sir, if you listen to what I said, I actually do not support bringing it back to a single family. So apparently you didn't listen to what I said, but everyone else is entitled to have their own opinion about this property, and that doesn't mean they're gentrifiers or that they're racist. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Any other individuals in support of this item? Seeing none, we have speakers in opposition of this item. Please come up to the podium. You have 5 minutes. State your name and address and sign in afterwards.
Good evening. I am Dave Helstern. I live at 803 Hickman Road in Riverbend. I am a board member of the Des Moines Historical Society. I am a board member of Home Inc., the nonprofit located in Riverbend that helps people attain home ownership. I'm also an attorney in the metro area. I want to clarify some things that were brought up at the September 7th meeting. I wasn't here, but I watched it on video. Thank you for posting those on YouTube. The rental certificate for this property expired September 7th, 2020. not 2022. I believe it states that in the report. It expired September 7th, 2020. Starlink did not buy these properties until April 26th, 2022. So almost a full 2 years went by that these rental certificates were expired. They bought 4 properties as a bundled unit, 16 combined rental units, and nobody thought to check the rental certificates on these 16 combined units on 4 properties. Somebody dropped the ball. Somebody didn't do their due diligence. They did not do things correctly. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. If there was a rental certificate on this property, we wouldn't be here. Starlink is asking you to help them fix their mistake and go completely against the city and the neighborhood's plan. And that's why we're here today, to ask that it be denied. This is not part of the plan DSM. The IT list is one of its action items to distribute affordable housing broadly throughout the city to avoid concentrations in neighborhoods or one sector of the city. That is Appendix A, page 89 of the plan, in case you want to look it up. In October 27th, 2008, the city downzoned the Riverbend neighborhood in an attempt to reduce density. So all Riverbend residential that was originally built as single family went from R3 to R1. So that is only since 2008. We're talking 15 years. That's a drop in the bucket compared to most of these houses that are over 100 years old. 1900 Arlington that we're talking about is 117 years old itself, built in 1906. And that rezoning, downzoning, was ordinance 14,804, in case you can look it up. In the 2016 Riverbend Neighborhood Plan, it states these changes were initiated by Riverbend Neighborhood Association in an effort to increase opportunities for home ownership in the neighborhood. That's page 7 of that plan. So the clear plan for the last 15 years has been to try to reduce density in this neighborhood and to create home ownership opportunities. This was all created after long hours and hard work by many of the Riverbend neighbors over a long period of time. And we here today appreciate all their hard work from the past. The results can be seen in this very meeting. My house used to be 4 apartments. Mr. Nelson, who I believe is going to speak, his house was apartments. Mike Hildebrand, who was here September 7th, his houses were apartments. Everybody that came through the Riverbend neighborhood tour seemed to say, oh, well, it seems like most of these houses used to be apartments, because they were. And it's only because of the efforts of these neighbors and this plan, the neighborhood plan and the DSM plan, that's the only reason that this is working. And so to address Mr. Lewis's concern from the last meeting that there's not enough affordable rentals in the area, I looked online last night. There's 14 rental units available just in Riverbend right now. And the cheapest is $650 a month. The next is $695. Then it goes into the 700s, and there's quite a few of those. But there's 14 available right now. So I don't think we have a rental shortage in Riverbend. What we have is a shortage of available housing for sale in the neighborhood. We can't, we don't have enough stock to be able to provide for people that want to buy single-family houses in our neighborhood. They see the great things that are happening, our farmers market, Center on 6th, a bunch of things that are coming, and they want to be a part of it. Prime example is a house at 1321 8th Street. It went on the market September 8th, and it had an offer which it accepted in 4 days. So it was on the market for a total of 4 days. That was 4 bedrooms, 2 bath.
We're nearing the 5 minutes if you want to finish your thoughts.
Okay. What we are missing, particularly in housing stock, is big houses that multi-generational families who all live together could buy and live under one roof. That is very common nowadays. especially in our neighborhood. And Home Inc. in particular, we make sure that we have a finished basement with egress and ingress so that the family can have that space. This house would be available for that space if they put it on the market. To address whether we asked to buy it, I actually asked you, Becky, in that meeting specifically how much she would sell it for. I never got an amount, price until tonight. So I just heard 300,000, but I did ask. So that's not accurate to you say, well, nobody asked me if we could buy it or how much it would cost.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Please sign in. Anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? You have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Chad Nelson. I live at 1236 9th Street in the Riverbend neighborhood. I am a member of the Riverbend Board. I am a commissioner on the Historic Preservation Commission, and I also am a small business owner who focuses on the preservation of historic homes. Eventually, I'll have a little projector thing up.
Do you want us to switch to the document camera?
I'm sorry?
Do you want us to switch to the document camera?
Yeah, and I won't do it until later on, but I will need it in a second. All right, so first, Article 1 of the zoning ordinance states its purpose is protecting and promoting public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Increasing the density of this area is not promoting safety in the area of Riverbend. It is already too densely populated even without 1900 Arlington's 7 units. Several studies have shown increasing density also increases crime. One simply states increasing commercial and residential density is positively associated with homicide and aggravated assault. Another states population density was found to have a significant negative relationship with property crime. This area already has a problem with crime. Least of all was the recent illegal casino and prostitution ring that was established a block away at a come and go, get and go, something, I don't know. But they had fish games, prostitution, drugs. The neighborhood had to fight that for a year to get it shut down. The police were of very little assistance. City council was failing us. Eventually, we hounded it down. We also hear stories. My neighbor is the 5th generation who lives in the house while it was built. They were saying 15 years ago, they were sitting on the front porch with their grandson on their knee while drug deals were happening on the porch next door to them. And prostitutes, sex workers, were at the house caddy corner, working on the corner, living in the house. And as Dave mentioned, it's been the work of the last 15, 20 years of the Riverbend Association to reduce this density and to start to drop that down, but it's still an issue with the casino. And even in 2021, foregoing all distancing measures, we had a sex worker who was working the corner directly outside of our house so that when we were working at our kitchen table, we got to see the Johns stop by. In any case, second, the zoning ordinance states its purpose is to protect the natural environment and to respond to the threat of climate change. It's been said the greenest building is the one already built. The amount of embodied carbon in this home is tremendous. I have seen up close how the applicant has cared for other buildings in their portfolio. I was one of the ones that went on the tour. Things were done to meet the bare minimum for rental approval. Eaves are falling off, foundation walls are bulging, straps for gutters are screwed into the top of the shingles. Such a small thing that was done because it was fast and cheap, as opposed to peeling back the shingle layer and installing them correctly, will lead to water penetration, which will lead to rot and decay. Their large apartment complex on 9th Street had visible rot on the exterior, and holes were hastily filled with expanding foam. These practices do not lead to the longevity of a structure. The interiors, too, were subpar, with cracks in plaster, hastily patched holes, and bulging walls covered in paint. Unknown damage is being done by covering the problems with caulk, paint, and foam. The structure is slowly decaying and, without proper upkeep, will eventually reach a point of no return, or, demolition through neglect, where the only option will be demolition, and rebuild something new in its place. Destroying this building will be an affront to the stated goal to respond to the threat of climate change. Allowing this to stay a single-family home will allow for a homeowner who genuinely cares about the structure and can appropriately address any underlying issues instead of covering them up to pass an inspection. I own a small preservation and restoration company, and I can confidently say it's absolutely possible to fix these issues, but it requires a commitment that the applicant hasn't shown they possess due to their focus on profits first and foremost. Lastly, the ordinance states The intent of zoning districts is to achieve development that is appropriate in scale and intensity for neighborhoods within the city, and an N5 district is intended to preserve the scale and character of neighborhoods such as the River Bend neighborhood. Increasing the density in this part of the neighborhood is not appropriate in intensity. Nowhere else in the city is there an area this densely clustered. Density reduction has been the aim of the neighborhood for at least the last 15 years, I believe even the last 20, as Dave mentioned in his speech. In the past, City Council has recognized the efforts, and the Planning and Zoning Commission has recognized the efforts of Riverbend neighborhood to reduce density. For example, I have the City Council meeting minutes and the Planning and Zoning meeting minutes for 1716 Oakland, a 4,800 square foot home just 1 block south of 1900 Arlington, was rezoned from R3 to R160 in 2008, quote, in response to an effort by the Riverbend neighborhood to reduce density and encourage density reduction within dwellings that had been converted from single-family to multifamily. In 2013, Planning and Zoning
Reaching your 5 minutes if you want to wrap it up.
In 2013, Planning and Zoning denied rezoning from low density to medium density. At the time, the person who had bought the house in question was unaware it wasn't zoned how they wanted it to be zoned, and they would never have bought it if they couldn't do what they want to do, which is an argument we're hearing tonight. They also said that it had dropped a lot of money in it, and again, another argument that we're hearing. But one quote from the meeting stands out. It was from Dan Flaherty. He said, "If the commission is going to promise the citizens that single-family residential is the vision for the area, then it should be followed through. The commission kept its promise then. I ask that you uphold your promise now." The plan at the time was to rezone low-density residential, and they stuck to their guns. Here, 1900 has been legally zoned to N5, and the promise that it could be reverted back to a single-family home, and this commission has no reservation about immediately pulling back on their promise. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would like to submit the letter, just give it to one of our staff members, and we can keep it for the record. Is anyone else in the audience in opposition to this project? Please come up to the podium, state your name and address. And you have 5 minutes, and don't forget to sign in afterwards.
Hi. I'm Amber Subcheck. I live at 1934 Arlington, just a couple hundred feet away from the property in question and another rental property that Starlink owns. When we ended the previous meeting, I was under the impression that the last continuance was given to allow time for Starlink to reach out and discuss the issues that my family and other neighbors had with this rezoning. I admit that at the time, I was genuinely interested in opening a line of communication, collaborating, and sharing ideas and solutions, yet my household has, at this point, received only one email. That was last Tuesday evening, the same week of the previous meeting that got continued. I've received no other calls or emails offering me the chance to tour their properties along with the Riverbend Board when they did so, or to find any other path forward. I found this to be incredibly disappointing and only adds to my distaste and distrust of Starlink overall. The board's concerns about density and Starlink's policies that were brought up in the previous meeting are valid. I agree that density is one way to address housing concerns. However, this neighborhood already has its fair share of density, as others have brought up. In addition to the existing multi-unit properties on Arlington, there are also several single-family homes being shared by roommates, multi-generational or blended families. In the case of 1942 Arlington, it was recently purchased, not rented, by several young roommates and their partners that are now building equity and enjoying the ups and downs, as they happen, of homeownership. Of the 9 buildings from 1900 to 1942, I believe that the only unattached single-family home with one family living in it is mine. 1900 is a 4,000 square foot home. It will have density by default. Unless we think Dracula is going to buy this home and roam its halls alone at night, a 4,000 square foot house will have density. There are solutions that can preserve the home and keep equity and dollars in the hands of Des Moines residents instead of landlords. I would also like to address some of the concerns that arose with Starlink's rental policies. Starlink's online-only payment policy is inherently problematic, as not all have internet access, devices to connect to the internet, or even bank accounts. To assume that they do is privilege in the highest. Given that most renters looking for this type of transitional housing may be experiencing times of financial turmoil, a credit check is also highly problematic. Divorce, job changes, and even the multiple credit checks that come along with house hunting or mortgage pre-qualification can lower these scores temporarily and omit otherwise very worthy tenants. There's also mention of running criminal background checks. I can tell you right now that this would immediately disqualify even myself as a renter. I have a criminal record, and with these types of policies, I would be barred from renting a tiny apartment in a neighborhood in which I already own a home and reside. We were told that these policies help them to find a, quote, ideal renter, but these policies are, at their core, racist and exclusionary. Starlink has at this point proven themselves to be untrustworthy and irresponsible. We are only having these meetings because they made a mistake. They purchased a building with a lapsed rental certificate, a lapse that was supposed to automatically revert this property back to a family home per the DSM plan, as others have mentioned. The responsibility is now being passed back to the neighborhood to keep to fight things in place as they were designed by this commission. This was always supposed to be the plan for this neighborhood, but I now feel that I am being asked that my street suffers for someone else's financial blunder. We have now twice seen Starlink's polished presentation, which includes their business model and use of the Burr method. Openly stating that you will attempt to squeeze as much out of a property while making the smallest possible financial investment is not a flex. It is a giant red flag. I have no doubt that they will treat 1900 as they do all of their other properties, carving up a home into as many marketable pieces as possible while destroying any lingering character or charm, while doing the absolute bare minimum in the exterior of the property. I do not operate on taking someone's word. We've heard from them that there is a plan in place and there's architect. I'm not involved with that process, and I'm not willing to hinge it on someone's word. Starlink does not provide a public service here. The fact that they are now asking for public funds to bail them out of their poor financial decision, to me, is absolutely disgusting. Didn't think we could sink any more low, but now to hear that there are meetings with the city to say, no, give me more money so that I can generate more profit for myself, I think is foul. They admitted that they're only interested in Riverbend because they've been priced out of other neighborhoods like Drake. So what does that mean for the property of their the future of their Riverbend properties? They've already faced fines and code violations on one of the properties in Riverbend, which is a constant source of headache and security concerns for me personally, given that my fence backs up to the alley shared with these neighboring properties, and I struggle daily with area tenants trespassing, noise, there's police activity, and also littering. I collected multiple bags of trash this week, and earlier this spring, I collected several bags that included drug paraphernalia and even bags and bottles of human waste. But let's be real, this isn't about their other properties, it's about the future of 1900 Arlington. Even if Starlink was the best possible landlord, we have no control over the potential next owners. These homes should be in the hands of people, not businesses, and certainly not part of some 100-unit portfolio. Rezoning this property as anything but a single-family home is forever condemning this corner and the neighborhood to exist not as a relevant and important historical district to be used as a model for surrounding historical communities, but a neighborhood whose only value lies in its vulnerability to being pillaged over and over by landlords, investors, and those that don't share our vision of preserving the rich and beautiful history of the city of Des Moines.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Please state your name and address. You have 5 minutes and sign in afterwards.
Ben Spade, 1934 Arlington. I can't say any better than what my neighbors have said. I just want to be another voice in opposition. There's a couple of points of clarification. One, at a $300,000 asking price, that's essentially like anywhere from a 15 to 18 cap rate, which in any type of real estate investing is disgusting. It means it's very risky, so you're going to need a high rate of return. So it doesn't really, I don't know. They're just trying to, I guess, have a golden parachute on the way out, is my interpretation of it. Like Amber said, previous to me, there is a list of qualifications in order to rent there. You can't have a prior eviction, no criminal background check, or no, I don't know the specifics of it, but it involves a criminal background. 600 credit score, and no government assistance. So while they're trying to get government assistance, they won't allow the residents to have government assistance. I'm a lot of things, but I've also found myself in a period of transition multiple times in my life. And I have been recently divorced, and in looking for some transitional housing, I ultimately ended up in Sherman Hill because every place I would look had this box that you check, have you ever been convicted of a crime? And some would be felonies, some would be misdemeanors, whatever. But in Sherman Hill, they just handed me a sheet of paper that basically asked me demographic information and can you afford this? And I could. So I paid a lot more to live in a different neighborhood. But I make a great living. I work at the same company that Becky works at for a 9 to 5, but I couldn't rent from them. So to me, that poses a problem. I don't think the answer here is landlords. I do think the problem is housing, affordable housing, and density. So I'm sort of torn. I just don't think this is the answer. And that's my time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in opposition? Please come up, state your name and address, and you can sign in afterwards. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Diana Rezak, and I live directly across the street from the property. If I go out my door, I can look at 1820 Arlington, which was built as a one-family, which has been converted to 4. I could look at 1903 Arlington, which was built as one family. It now holds 3 units. I can look at 1924 Arlington, which was built as 1 and is now 2. This is 9 units without even discussing 1900 Arlington, which would add that to 7, almost double the density. Within my block, I have 2 apartment buildings, 253 Franklin with 24 units. Zillow says the estimated rent is $750. At 1805 Arlington, there is 36 units, which Zillow says the estimated rent is $702. I personally believe in good housing. I spent 10 years in nonprofit working for both NFC and Home Inc. to provide good housing. I believe if it's built as 1 unit, it should go back to 1 unit. I've been a landlord in Des Moines for 30 years. I have to have a rental certificate. I rent my river house for $700. I have a duplex in Sherman Hill, which is under the market value. In fact, my neighbor rented their property for $350 more than I do. I believe in equality, and one of my tenants, I believe, is a person of color, though I've never asked. But I do believe that we need to bring this property back to a 1 residence. At our last meeting, we discussed the vehicle issue. As a landlord in the Sherman Hill neighborhood, which is the most walkable neighborhood, I walk to work, my tenants do not. They have 3 cars. Why? Childcare, they work for a tree service, and they're going to DMAC. The one that lives at home still needs a vehicle to get to the grocery store. At the Riverbend River House, when my tenant retired, she was going to sell her car. She could not make bus connections to her doctors in West Des Moines. She would have to go downtown, transfer bus to go to West Des Moines. So the bus, we could talk about that more, but we won't. That is not the issue tonight. I believe that the property needs to be 1 resident, and I have lived next to a vacant property in Sherman Hill. In fact, the water was left on, and the back of the house was a waterfall. What happened to that property is it was eventually bought by a family, and it is now worth over $300,000 on this Polk County Assessor's page. The advantage of that property being vacant, instead of having a bad landlord, was the ability, if I saw someone there, I could call the police because they should not be here. I think you've heard from a number of different people. I just want to tell you, remember the Des Moines plan. Remember, we're in a historical area. We need to have less density in my corner of the world. And this commission has already set a precedent of not allowing the house on Oakland. I thank you for your time. I would not want to be on this commission It was so painful to listen to 2 hours of discussion last time. So I appreciate you all taking your time and your energy to be with us and listen to us complain. Thank you.
Thank you. Please sign in. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Please come up to the podium, state your name and address. You have 5 minutes, and you can sign in afterwards.
Angela Thorne, I live at 1339th Street. My house was multifamily when we bought it. It was all boarded up. I'm also a landlord in Riverbend. I'm on a hands-on landlord. I have a building on 6th Avenue and 8th Street. I've been part of another company for over 25 years. The building that's on 6th Avenue is affordable housing. It was meant for multifamily. We have studios for 620 with all utilities paid, with managers on site. We worked really hard in Riverbend to make this down to low density. It took almost 30 years to get there. The past commissioners accepted it. City council accepted it. If city council accepted it, that's stronger than what you guys are. I'm all about people having affordable housing, but when it's built for multi-family. I can't say any more of what my neighbors have said. I'm just adding the cherry on top. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anyone else that would like to speak in opposition, that wants to share something that has not already been shared. All right, seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in neutral position? You have 5 minutes. If you want to come up, state your name and address. You can sign in afterwards.
Hi, my name is Kathy Helstern. I live at 803 Hickman Road. I am here as a representative of the Riverbend Neighborhood Association, of which I am currently the president. Thank you so much for requesting input from Riverbend Neighborhood Association. We are a neighborhood that clearly takes pride in doing our civic duty by responding to requests for input from our city commissions. And we know how very important these conversations are. Due to the complexity of this issue, we were unable to reach a consensus as a neighborhood and cannot provide a direct recommendation to this commission. This has obviously been clear to you as you've heard from various neighbors and their different positions. I think you also maybe could get a sense of how this process now threatens to divide the community that we've been working so hard to build as a neighborhood as we have these difficult discussions with each other. We've had many discussions about this rezoning request and have taken a lot of our own time to consider it. Even though we couldn't all agree on a path forward, we thought it would be very helpful for you to understand various neighborhood priorities as you make your recommendation to the City Council. We care about our neighbors having access to safe, affordable, comfortable homes that they can take pride in. That is what we watch out for. We want to make sure that the neighbors who don't have much choice in where they can live have people looking out for them, whether they know it or not. We care about housing stock and density and neighborhood stabilization. We want our neighborhood to thrive because we all love the place where we have made our homes. We talked about density reduction and what it has done for improving situations on other streets. We talked about housing stock and what lack of access means for our neighbors. We talked about other multifamily projects coming to our neighborhood and how it will open up Riverbend life to so many more people. But we could not agree on what was best for this corner. We care about the time and effort that has been put into the neighborhood by neighbors who have and are building community, rehabilitating broken homes, and helping leaders shape the future of the neighborhood through zoning plans so that quality of life remains good for all. We want to acknowledge that the neighborhood plan decisions were not made lightly, and the people who participated in them have invested deeply in Riverbend. We care about historic preservation, neighborhood appeal and beautification, and the structural integrity of homes that were built to last. We talked about the effect that dividing up single-family homes into so many units has had on the structural integrity of those homes. We talked about how bad actors looking to turn a profit didn't actually maintain multifamily units, and how much housing stock is now missing or near demolition because no one took a close enough look to make sure structures were sound. We talked about how multifamily units do have a place in the history of our neighborhood. We care about business development and entities who have a stake in our community, more than just at the profit level. When property owners live in the communities where they own, they are more aware of the quality of life of their clientele, and they take better care of the community. We talked about this property being owned by a business we do have a line of communication with as an association, and hoping that we can maintain that communication and that they truly do care about our community. We care about the community we are building here and having relationships with neighbors, whether they rent one room or own multiple properties. The important thing is that everyone feels welcome, safe, and at home. No matter what the future of this corner is, when this meeting ends and we go home to Riverbend, that is what we will strive for. I will end by saying that we do appreciate the effort Starlink representatives have put into researching options for exterior improvements at 1900 Arlington, and including an expert in historical rehabilitation in that process. We have toured their properties, and we have spoken with neighbors who rent from them. We do not believe they have any ill intent toward our neighbors, or those who rent from them, or those who don't. We appreciate that their parent company has a history of long-term property ownership. We appreciate the relationship we are building with them and hope that we have the opportunity to continue to develop it. Hearing more about their goals to provide affordable housing and improving neighborhoods rather than just financial information and profit considerations, we do have hope that Starlink is the type of landlord we can work with to help neighbors achieve a high quality of life in Riverbend. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak neutral? Please come up, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Brian Bai, 523 Franklin. In an ideal world, as a neighbor who lives right down the block, I would very much prefer that this property revert back to single family with owner-occupied density. That being said, I'm a pragmatist. I listened very closely to many of your arguments and good discussions at the last meeting. I also recognize that this property, it has had a history of alterations and major additions that make it very challenging to easily revert the exterior back to any sort of historically sensitive approach without some significant investment. We have homes in the neighborhood that the interior was cut into many units, yet the exterior retained most of its integrity. That is certainly not the case with this property. So I do approach it from a pragmatic perspective of thinking about the best path forward, particularly for the exterior. Does that make me selfish as someone who looks at this every day? Maybe, but it also, I care very, very greatly about the history of our neighborhood and the relationship of this property and others with the surrounding context. I think that a number of you were perhaps inclined to approve this at 7 units without any sort of caveats, without any sort of additional requirements. I find that very frustrating. I think that as someone who has worked very deeply to promote the history on both the Historic Preservation Commission, serving on the advisory board for the city's new historic preservation plan, which was adopted, and as certainly someone who has spent a lot of time researching the history of our neighborhood and the individual properties, I think we have not an opportunity, but a requirement to integrate our priorities of historic preservation, density, and housing. So as you as individual commission members think through what is right for this property, I urge you to think about how, if you are inclined to approve this, and there is an opportunity to invest funds in the exterior, maybe it's an approach where we make it conditional upon application of those dollars and approval of those dollars by City Council, because we need to serve multiple priorities. We can't just blanket approve because we want additional density. We also have to think about what our neighbors are saying here, and certainly the historic context of the property. So it's a challenging property, absolutely, and I don't envy you all, but I really request that you take a lot of care with your vote this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to sign in, please, before you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as neutral? Seeing none, are there any questions for staff before we close the public hearing? Oh, yes. The applicant does get a 5-minute rebuttal for any of the comments shared by the audience.
Do I need to say my name again and everything? Okay. I just want to point out that we do have cash options. They can go to a Casey's, and it's a QR code that you can scan, and they can get a money order remitted directly. So that's one way to pay. That's, not really online only. So I didn't want to state that, and just to talk about the cost of $300,000. I mean, for something like this, it's comparable. I work in real estate full time, so I think I know what I'm talking about with valuation, because essentially the $300,000 that came about is essentially just the loan balance plus equity and just time and energy with certain things involved. So that was just the number to be break even or a slight negative. So there is no cap rate involvement here at all, and it's a comparable because it's 7-unit with a low density. Anything that's more than usually 5 units is based on a cap rate, but in this case, if you can rent it out for more, it's worth more in a sense. So I just want to clarify that point. And I can answer any questions that you may have too, unless I can go back to my seat and come back up here.
Commission, any additional questions before we close the public hearing?
Someone said you didn't accept government assistance, but I thought that last meeting there was talk that you did actually.
We do. So let me clarify that. Okay. Good point. Whenever we buy a building, if it does come with Section 8 or any type of aid, we keep them as tenants. It's a case-by-case basis, but we have evicted Section 8 tenants for just how they've treated the unit, and them just not being even a rent-paying tenant sometimes on time, and they lose funding if they don't pay their rent and they get evicted. So we have 3 or 4 Section 8 tenants right now in our portfolio because they've been rent-paying good tenants. And of course, we'll keep them there, absolutely. We've had NOM housing tenants as well, but they were causing a lot of disruption. Kind of 3 strikes, you're out we give them grace, we work out payment plans with them. We are working with a mom right now that has many kids, and we're working a payment plan with her. We talk to our tenants. We don't kick you out just because you don't pay your rent on time. That's not how we do business. So I just want to clarify that. If you're in violation of the lease agreement, absolutely. If you're a person that brings in illegal people that shouldn't be in the lease agreement, you're smoking in a unit, you're not supposed to be smoking in a unit, or illegal substances of that matter, or criminal activity, I have every reason to non-renew you on the spot. I'll give you 10, 15 days to cure your lease, but if not, I cannot tolerate such behavior in my apartment, absolutely not. So I just want to put it out there that we do have tenants. We don't explicitly generally prefer to, just because it comes with a lot of bells and whistles, and Section 8 housing, there's an annual inspection needs to be done and different things like that. But it's a really case-by-case basis, but that's kind of how we've been operating. And the 600 credit score, by the way, is a very loose requirement. It just sifts out a lot of traffic sometimes that are tricky. So we have some kind of measure. And this is the same thing that we do for principal-owned properties, by the way. We can discriminate based on credit score and criminal background, generally, and eviction records. It's kind of industry standard, if you will. So, thank you.
I've got a quick one.
Yes.
Your two adjoining properties on either side, the fiveplex and is it a threeplex?
Mhm.
Are those all those apartments rented out right now? Were you able
Yeah,
to-
so the 3-unit, we have it rented out 1908 to, rent-paying quiet tenants, I believe. And Sheena, my asset manager, is here today. 319 Franklin, fiveplex, we have 4 leases signed, 1 occupied right now. So we had a BB gun issue there where the tenant that was in 1900 moved across the street and it was probably shooting BB gun pellets into our unit, and that was not fun to deal with. And it was vacant at that point, so it was hard to lease up, but we got it leased up and it's been quiet. And we're actually gonna get, hopefully, HPC approval to remove the fence that's surrounding it. There's like this wire fence that makes it look pretty not great curb appeal-wise. And then there's the front door that's solid right now, that we hope to replace with something approved that allows light to come in through the common areas. And that egress right now, we've engaged a different architect to draw the plans and a structural engineer. We have to get it replaced by January 29 next year, and we are gonna do it. So, just some pointers. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and let the commission deliberate.
Okay, so I'm going to take point of privilege here for just a moment. Really what we're looking at doing is, the question is, do we rezone one particular property in a neighborhood that the neighbors had chosen to not rezone and the city has approved? But more importantly, it's a hole in the fabric of the neighborhood, and the owner has other opportunities to figure out how to find relief. We have that ability. So what I'm asking is, do we really, as a commission, want to make a statement and circle one spot in that neighborhood for one person who made a bad decision? I mean, that's permanent, when they have other methods to follow to find relief. And so I'm not ready to do a permanent piece. That's my statement. So essentially, I'm going to say I'm going to deny staff. I'm just going to throw it out there. Ready for discussion?
Thank you. Anyone else have thoughts?
I have a question for staff. There is clearly, like, the neighbors were expressing a lot of history around trying to make this neighborhood less dense over time. Why, in this case, does the city believe that's not the right move?
Yeah, when we looked at this particular request, there's a variety of things that went into our thinking and formulating a staff recommendation, and be the first to say that, this wasn't an easy one to think through, and we looked at it from a variety of angles. One of the things that stood out to us is it is located on a corner. It has other multifamily around it, and we thought about what are the possibilities. We also acknowledged the amount of addition and alteration that's happened to it, and just the volume of square footage, and what could be reasonable sized dwellings, either dwelling as a single family or multifamily. Another consideration, and as we looked at how to make a recommendation here, was to think about parking, and you put all that together, and we ultimately felt that 5 units here would work. Also, from a historic preservation standpoint, over time have seen properties, they evolve, and sometimes it takes multiple attempts in multiple ways, and energy from different property owners to maybe to over 20 or so years for things to change. And I think that the challenge here is the size of the site and the corner location with the other properties right up against it. So I don't know that at this time, single family is going to be more challenging when you factor those things into it. But those were kind of all the things that we talked about as we contemplated what to make a recommendation on, so. N5, in the current zoning? One. So yeah, it's currently zoned for one household use.
But, and they can go to the Board of Adjustments, correct?
Yeah, if the zoning is denied by the city council, they do have the option to seek a use variance. They'll have to demonstrate a hardship. And we've talked about, we've had applications in the past, so this isn't something completely new to the board, I'm sure, but I think that their hardship that they would present to the board is probably all the things that I've laid out as far as, challenges. But it would be ultimately the Board of Adjustments' decision to make.
And we also don't want to look bias or have our own conscious bias of what size house people will purchase. Because an 8-unit, 4,500 square foot house was converted to a single family just a half a block down. So I don't think it's our decision to make that call.
On the last, when this was on the calendar, I voted against rezoning, and I've heard very good arguments on both sides, and I'm sympathetic to the applicant and her desire to make this work financially. But I'm going to stick with my no vote. I think we need to selectively decide what should be more dense and less dense based on the neighborhood and the surrounding circumstances. So I'm going to stick with a no vote.
I think this is obviously tough, but this is a neighborhood that I think a lot of thought's gone into. It's on the cusp. Honestly, there are some houses in here that are the crown jewels of Des Moines. I think there's one on the south side of Franklin that is unbelievable, the shape that it's in. And this neighborhood it's one of those places that's pretty special, except for a few exceptions, and this is one of the exceptions. And my feelings are that, if we allow it to rezone, it's just going to hold this neighborhood back from making further improvements towards being that really special place, getting back to where it once was. The exterior of this house is in horrendous condition. I don't know how much money it's going to take. And to hear that if the grant comes through, they might do some things to fix that up, doesn't turn me to a yes. There's really, honestly, when you look at the zoning map, there's north of Franklin, even across 6th Avenue, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties that are orange and not N5. So I will not be supporting the rezoning.
Any other thoughts, discussions, motions?
Motion to deny staff.
And the request.
That's my,
Yeah.
to deny zoning, rezone, sorry.
That's all right.
We have a motion on the floor to deny the rezoning request. Unless there are any other thoughts, all those in favor of that motion, please raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign.
Yeah, I got 5-5, so motion fails.
I would move staff.
Okay.
I will, I would support that, but I don't want to split a baby here. I don't know that she wants 5. I don't know that they want 5. So if we go with 5, literally no one's happy. Oh, we're not.
No, the rezoning, the staff recommendation
says
says
5.
5.
Yeah, the staff
Recommendation is 5. So if we go with the staff rec, it's for 5.
Well, then I'll correct. I'll move staff without a limitation on number of units, because I agree that having a limitation on the units doesn't seem logical if we're going to change the zoning. So if we're changing the zoning, there doesn't seem to be a logic in actually economically restricting it. I agree with that. So apologies, yes. I move staff without a unit limitation.
I guess I would caution you because that the high-density designation on the land use map has no cap. So it wouldn't necessarily stop, we wouldn't necessarily have any control to stop at 7. So if you're comfortable, just
So you have to put it
recognize that
7 cap
Should we just
So-
say 7?
per the request of the
So,
applicant.
yeah, so cap it at what it's currently at 7, is that correct?
Yeah, I would just move staff and change the condition to a maximum of 7 units.
I agree with that. Okay.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to move staff with the caveat of 7 units as maximum instead of 5. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign.
Okay, so that motion failed, so I think the alternative, unless somebody else wants to find something that's in the middle, I don't think there's anything in the middle, the item will just go on without a recommendation. The record will reflect the discussion, or reflect, the votes, that all will be provided to the council, but at some point it'll go, it's gotta go on.
Can you repeat that, Jason, on the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, there was a motion to deny, that didn't pass. There was a motion to approve with some limitations, that did not pass. Unless you all think there's something in the middle, which I don't believe there is, there's no reason to wait to have another motion made. So now the item will be sent on to the city council. They'll receive the record, so they'll understand what the discussion, what's transpired. They'll see how the votes went, what kind of motions were made, but it'll move on.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Since there's more than 20% opposition, it will take a supermajority vote at council for it to pass.
Thanks for clarifying that, Bert.
Bert,
Appreciate it.
would that be no matter what, though? Like, even if we had recommended one way or the other?
Sure. If the commission recommends denial, that triggers the need for a supermajority vote, or if more than 20% of property owners within 200 feet register in opposition, that triggers that as well.
So no matter how you voted tonight, there was going to be a supermajority requirement.
Thank you, Bert. I'll hand it over
Okay.
back to the chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Alcivar. I'm back. All right. I will give a few seconds here for members of the audience to leave the room. Thank you very much. We will move on to item number 7, a request from 621-625 Ovid LLC for the following regarding 2 parcels located in the vicinity of 621 Ovid Avenue. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM, to amend Plan DSM, to revise the future land use classification from low-density residential to high-density residential, and to rezone the property from N5 residential district to NX2 mixed-use district to allow a third dwelling unit within each of the 2 existing duplex structures. Shreyoshi from staff is here to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shreyoshi Chakraborty, planning staff. The request before you is for 2 parcels in the vicinity of 621 Ovid Avenue. The property in question is on Ovid Avenue. It's in the Oak Park neighborhood, very close to the Highland Park, Oak Park neighborhood node, which is just further north east from here. This is the 6th Avenue corridor right here. The subject parcels are currently zoned N5. The request is to rezone to NX2. The applicant is proposing to add an additional unit in the basement of each of the duplexes on each of the parcels. So as you can see here, there's 2 parcels. Each of them have a duplex. So the proposal is to add a unit in the basement, and so essentially it will be functioning as a triplex. And in order to do that, they're seeking the rezoning to NX2 district, which would allow that. I have some pictures here for you to give you a context of the area. These are the 2 duplexes in question. This is looking from Ovid Avenue. Another angle. There is an existing sort of semi-paved concrete driveway that is shared between the 2 duplexes that runs between the two buildings. As you can see here, the applicant has already made some investments. As you can see, the windows and the doors have been replaced. Some other improvements have been done, the egress window for the basement unit and so on. This is a concept sketch of what is being proposed. So you can see here, these are the 2 duplex units. This is the existing driveway. They do have quite a bit of space in the back, which has access off of the alley. They are proposing to have off-street parking here in the back. They need 6 off-street parking spaces for the 2 buildings, as they would be required to have at least 1 off-street parking space per unit. And let's see, there's going to be access to the 2 upper units from the front. As you can see here, the access to the basement unit would be from the back of the property, off of the parking area. And that's about it here. I'm going to move on to the staff rationale and the staff recommendation. So as I mentioned, this property is in the Oak Park neighborhood. It's very close to the Highland Park neighborhood node. There's quite a bit of activity over there. It's a fairly walkable neighborhood with several amenities. Within close proximity, there's a DART bus stop and transit route that runs along 6th Avenue corridor, which is just a block away. So given those considerations, staff believes that the proposal and the use is appropriate for the area and provides housing options. It also supports a couple of the land use goals and objectives of Plan DSM. However, given the size of the 2 parcels and the building, staff does feel, and the density as well as the parking situation in that area, staff does believe that that any approval of this request should limit the number of units within each building to 3 units. So therefore, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning of the property and subjecting to the condition that no building contain more than 3 dwelling units. So that is the staff recommendation. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting. It was reasonably well attended. There were about 12 neighbors that came to the meeting. They were receptive to the idea. They did express some concerns about parking, trash, and so on. And the applicant has indicated that they're looking at addressing some of the concerns that were brought forward by the neighbors at that time. They provided us some additional information here. We received a couple comment cards in support of the request. We've also received some comment cards in opposition, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can read through this. This is the consent map showing the properties in support and opposition of the proposal. And that concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions at this time.
How does the percent opposition get calculated there then? So what is the percentage of opposition in this case?
It is based on the land area of the opposition. So we receive the address of the person who is in opposition, and then we plug that into the map and calculate the land area, and that gives us the percentage.
And the other thing to note is that that calculation is based off of the inner circle you see there. It's a state code says 200 feet, but as a courtesy in Des Moines, we've always noticed 250. So we do show you everybody that gets notified, but that calculation is just the inner circle.
I have a question. Why is the recommended zoning Annex 1 and not N5-4?
Yeah, I think the applicant had a couple different options. They could choose to do N5-4, which would allow them the 3 units, or they could go Annex 2. I think they went with Annex 2 because that allows them a little more flexibility with respect to the design guidelines versus N5-4. So that would streamline their next steps with respect to design and site
It
plan.
allows the flat building type to be utilized and the requirements of that versus like a house type D, which has, different standards.
What are the parking, what's the parking situation here?
Yeah, I can, I'll go back to the map over here. So currently the applicant has quite a bit of space at the back. They do have an existing garage that they have indicated that they want to continue using that as a storage space, so there wouldn't be any parking space available. They would have to utilize a significant amount of space in the back. They do have enough space to provide that the 6 off-street parking spaces that are needed. Where they're going to have to be cognizant of is the impervious surface area. So they might be hitting the mark. I think it's about 65% impervious area that's allowed. So they could be getting pretty close to that threshold.
So they might be back for a type 2 design alternative to waive the...
It is possible. They have to still figure out what the design and layout is. They do have this this driveway space in the middle that they could potentially carve out a couple spaces over there. So they certainly have plenty of space that they can utilize for off-street parking. It's just how they're going to design and how they're going to make it work efficiently so they can stay within the percentages that are required.
And
Otherwise, they would need some relief.
They're required to have 6 off-street parking spaces. They can't utilize on-street parking.
Yeah, that's the requirement is 1 off-street space per unit, and since they have a total of 6 between the 2 parcels, they would need 6 spaces.
When we do get requests for relief, because parking is eligible for administrative waiver. One of the things we do consider is on, availability of on-street parking and those kinds of things, and whether or not that's a viable option or not.
But given that it's the two next to each other, they can work some arrangement if the one on the east has more space in the back, right?
Yeah, and we'll look at that at the site plan stage. I mean, I think if they do want to continue to have them on separate parcels, we'd have to have some sort of, some cross-access easements and then possibly a recorded, parking agreement. But we'll consider that or look into it at the site plan stage.
Any more questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Shreyoshi. The applicant is here. You may come forward, state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes to present. And if you can fill out the white sheet when you are finished.
Okay. Dominique Lennox. I live at 2131 Northwest 138th Street, Clive, 50325. So first and foremost, apologize for the drawing. This is second career option, not a engineer by any stretch of the imagination. So happy to explain my bad artwork however you need it. So we are the general contractors for the property owner who owns both of the properties. We're attempting to, one, increase housing, kind of like you heard from the previous side is, so this was originally when we should purchase the project, duplexes in both units, and the basement actually mirrors the same footprint. And so we realized that the basement may offer an opportunity, sorry, it's late, offer an opportunity to add an additional living space. So that's where we started kind of working with the planning department, trying to look at an alternative for how we could do this. So we're still very early into what a final product would look like. I think our partners with the city did an excellent job explaining the project itself. I think just a couple of things of note, starting with the folks from the city that did attend the city meeting on the 22nd. A lot of the concerns around the trash, around parking and things like that had a lot to do with previous management. And so a lot of that we were able to quell via those conversations about the more active management. And even though as the general contractors, my wife and I have different buildings within, or different rental properties within the city, and we're very hands-on, landlords, someone calls us with any type of problem, we're there for the day, and we'll be doing the general the general management for the owner once that goes into place. As far as, we talked a lot around the parking. We do have currently space, if you include the shared driveway, upwards to 7 to 8, approximately currently that we could do off-street parking. It really is going to come down to that final planning and design about what best suits the property as well as the tenants about ease and access in and out of those parking spaces. We're definitely very astutely aware of, we had an old growth tree that went down, so we know that we need to do some replanting to make sure we provide that shade coverage and things like that. So there's a couple of design pieces that we just are still working through with the city. And some of the stuff that is on here is more proposed as part of the site plan, but obviously still very early on in the stages of that in relation to it. So yes, so the intent is just to increase good rental properties in the area and utilize the space that otherwise would go unused. The intent would be, in the case that we did not rezone and did not add that third unit into the basement, is the basement would be essentially non-use space, right? We've done a lot of upgrades to the facility, or to the units already, all new plumbing, new electrical, HVAC systems, doing foundation repairs as well as a whole new foundation flooring. Even if the space wasn't going to be utilized, we wanted to make sure there was egress opportunities out of the basement because people get into basements, right? So we've taken a lot of care into making sure that the project is done well, despite being a duplex versus a triplex. Triplex is really about leveraging the space. So that's what I have, if you have questions.
Commissioners, questions for the applicant? I have a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
You might have mentioned this. What's the current use of the basements?
Current use was, originally, they had laundry hookups in the basements for the tenants. There's currently a shared stairwell that gets you into the basement that has secure doors on the back of each of those units. In the redesign of the top 2 units, the duplexes, we did in-unit laundry, so which ultimately took any requirements for the basement space out. And then there will be like the typical utilities, access panels and stuff like that, which, because there is access to it, we are going to secure and provide the services needed to be able to access utilities when needed.
Okay, so there was no additional storage for the duplex units?
No,
in
ma'am.
the basement? Okay, and have you considered radon mitigation in the basements if they were to be occupied?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a part of requirement. If the radon becomes an issue, then we would do the mitigation for that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there is anyone in the audience today who would like to speak in favor of this item, you may come forward now. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this item? Okay, seeing none. Anyone who would like to speak in neutral? Okay, seeing none and no need for an applicant rebuttal, I will close the public hearing and open it up to the commission for discussion.
I'll move staff.
Are there any commissioners who would like to discuss this item further before we take a vote? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to move staff, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Thank you. And if I'm not mistaken, that is the last item on the public hearing this evening. Do we have any committee or directors' reports?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much.